Hi there, I'm Ian McCombs. We're going to continue to talk about some of the worst books ever that were written by me. And the next book we're talking about is a very interesting book because one, it was one of the deepest, darkest, evilest books I've ever written. And two, it was a NaNoWriMo exploration to see how far I could take my writing. So this was 2018 and it was a pretty good year. I had pretty much a good lease on things. Things were going pretty well in 2018. To remember those days, right? And what happened is that I wanted to really stretch out how far I could write. Let's see how many words I can actually put down on a page. What I did was I set myself a goal. Normally it's 50,000. Hey, there's a book. I wanted to write double that. Let's write 100,000 words in a month. And when I started it, it was very much the book itself was an idea that I had in my mind. It was an interesting idea, and I planned it out a little bit. I didn't have too much of a complete, concrete idea of what I wanted to write. And in fact, my previous video on what I was writing up until I think it was October 15th or 20th, and I said, ooh, I need to get on that NaNoWriMo idea. Plan it out just a little bit. I wanted to do mostly pantsing, so just write as I go, and I really wanted to make it work with the 100,000 word count. I busted myself into this idea. This is generally the concept I want. These are the characters I want for the main characters, the minor characters, the side characters I really didn't care about. I just wanted to go forward with it. With this book, though, I was in a universe that I was familiar with, so it was easy to write. I generally knew the characters, where they came from, their backgrounds. It was just a matter of putting them in a whole new situation, putting them in a whole new world universe, and then going with that to see where it led me. As I said, this was one of my darkest, evilest books. There are a lot of characters, imagery, a lot of things in this book that are definitely terrible, awful, horrible, but presented in a lighthearted way. This book had the whole universe is a very terrible, evil setting, but told in a humorous, half lighthearted, gallows humor type of way of telling the stories. I haven't let anybody read it because there are some moments in the book where I went, that might have been too far, even for me, even for some of the people that I know that have really dark places where they go to for their fiction or other things. When I wrote it, I hit the ground running. I started, midnight on November the 1st, and I didn't do much of anything other than write. I didn't really go to the gym. I didn't really go hang out with people. There were a couple things. There was one point where I was at a thing with a bunch of friends, and so I wrote beforehand. I wrote a little bit there. I wrote afterwards. So I was writing all the time. So if I wasn't at work, I was pretty much writing. There were some times I'd go work out or go run or something like that, but I didn't do too much of that. I was just pretty much writing. So I would get off of work, say at 5 or 6, go to Starbucks and just sit there and write until they kicked me out. I'd be there Saturday for 8 hours a day, Sunday 8 hours a day, just writing, just going. I ended up, I think it was the 23rd or 25th, I actually ended up with 111,000 some words. Finished the book at that moment, realized I could go, I had another 7 days or so, 5 days or so. So I could write more. I could definitely write a whole nother couple, 10,000 words, maybe get it up to 150. But I realized that the story was done, and if I continued to write, I was just going to, have the the Return of the King, Lord of the Rings type issue where you have 12 different endings. And I just was like, no, I wanted to end. It's done. It's a linear story. It's not a circular story. It's not a hero's journey story. So really, it goes through its motions. It hits the end and boom, it's done. I made that happen, got to the end. There were a lot of different things that I wanted to continue with it. I decided I wasn't going to, just stop it there. So it worked. I've read it since. There are a lot of problems with it. Again, because I went on a lot of tangents, and there are a lot of scenes that if I was going to cut it, I would cut it. But out of just sheer audacity to write 100,000 words in just 30 days, I want to keep it at 111 or more words rather than cut it down. Oh, there's a lot of stuff you can cut. Oh, there definitely is. But I'd want to rather replace it with stuff so that way I could keep it at least saying, haha, I wrote most of this. Most of the ideas are set in stone. And were written during 2018 at NaNoWriMo. Good things I did in this book, I let myself go. And this was, not only was I trying to, and in the previous book, book 7, book 8, I was really trying to get myself out of my comfort zone, try to not have so many happy endings, not so many good stories with good people, and even though this universe is terrible and awful, it lends itself to, because of the tone, even in clash to the setting, it lends itself to that sort of happy-ish ending, even if it's not a perfect happy ending, at least it's something. I really had a lot of dark places where it went. There, half of the supporting cast die off. Same thing with the previous book and the previous book before there. Because again, I was trying to get out of my comfort zone, kill off some characters. I was taking a bit of trying to get the muse from George R.R. Martin to really just kill characters, just kill them off, just kill, these are the two important ones that live, but everybody else is fair game. Sure, why not? And just kept it with that, and I think it worked well because of that, because it became very hard to know who was going to live, who's going to die, especially in the previous two books. But this one, there were a lot of things that just change and happen and then just were terrible. Which was good, and it was good to get into that dark place to really write some dark, terrible things, so that way, as I wrote it, I could bring that out in future endeavors, rather than trying to shy away from that. Dark topics, dark issues, dark themes, and I kept it too airy, too light, and I really tried to make it more that, so I could get myself out of my comfort zone and really dig deep into some of those bad places. With finishing it, the bad things that I probably did with that book is I probably rushed it a little too much to two different places. I don't think it congeals as a story very well because there was not much planning to it. It was generally, these are the characters. There were only 4 when I started, and there's 12 to 16 when you get to the end of it. Some really interesting concepts that I really did like, but a lot of it is just kind of, this is a scene that I want, this is a setting I want, this is a character I want them to interact with, yada, yada, yada. And so it was really kind of scattershot, scatterbrained. And it's supposed to, in a way, play like that. It's supposed to kind of be written as a thriller. I like my background. I was trying to get a bunch of HD backgrounds, and I totally downloaded the wrong ones, and so, yay! Too small. So I tried to really make that work as a story, but it didn't really work in a lot of ways in certain things. Like I said, I have to cut it down, but again, I want to add stuff just to keep a word count over 100,000 or over 111,000. All in all, good experience, and I think compared, book 1 through 6 were me learning how to write, learning how I want to write, learning how my methodology of writing works for me, whereas book 7, 8, and even some of the later books are me really working out the joy of what I enjoy writing. So the previous book, it was a slog to write, but I loved writing it. The book previous to that was very tight write, but again, I really liked it. So this book, Again, it was a huge undertaking. I was very successful on it. I'm very proud of that. In that I pushed myself beyond my limits to what I thought I could do and proved that I could. I could write 111,000 words in 30 days if I just stuck to writing, which is pretty awesome. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of folks with writing tend to do, is we tend to, as I like to say with the stereotype of the writer, you got your little chapeau, you have your little clove cigarette, you got your tweed jacket with the arm patches, and you see it as some sort of thing where you just sit there for 3 hours and you write for 10 minutes, and then 8 years later you have a book. And I wanted to prove to myself that that concept that I had of doing that was not who I am. It's not me as a writer. It's not what I am. Some might say, oh, you're a talentless hack, which in many ways I agree to, especially with the videos that I've been pointing about my own writing. However, there is a good thing on pushing yourself. There's a good thing on really forcing yourself to write the book that you want to write. Definitely pushing yourself to explore the limits of your writing, to try a different writing style. You're a pantser, so try a planning. If you're a planner, try pantsing. If you're an intuitive writer, try a methodological way. If you're that, then do the other. So you really kind of branch out and see what you want to do. For instance, the 2019 NaNoWriMo, I think I wrote a romance and studied romance to learn how to do that. And that's what I think I do with NaNoWriMing now. Back in the day, 2013, 2014, 15, those first several books that I wrote for NaNoWriMo were very much let's really write a story. It's going to be publishable. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have $1 billion and all the fans and woo! That's what I thought I was going to do. But later books have been about exploring writing, exploring how I write, exploring what it means to me to be a writer, exploring my limits, exploring what I want out of my own writing, rather than other people telling me what writing is. How am I telling other people writing? Which is part of the reason why I ended up starting this channel, was because I want people to explore their writing. There are some things that I think are decently universal, but even then it changes over time. I may have said this in a previous video that you've heard, but everybody hates adverbs right now, but in some point in the future adverbs will come back. They probably will, and there'll be a bunch of folks that if you don't have a bunch of adverbs, if you don't have ly things all over the place, they don't want to read it, and that's just going to happen, because that's a cycle of publishers and editors and writers and English peoples and all that stuff. Eventually those things will come in cycles, and they'll work. So they strunk and white, chop everything down until you just have, dog runs, see dog run, dog get ball, dog come home, yay, end of story. Eventually will go away, and you'll have a much more purple prose type writing, or there'll be a lot of writing a sentence just to see, even how long of a sentence you can get on a page. Things like that will happen, and they happen in literature more so than they happen in genre fiction, but eventually those things will bleed into genre fiction as well. So yeah, book was good, book was fun, book taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that I might put limits upon myself, but my actual ability doesn't necessarily have those limits, and so putting artificial limits on myself to say, no, I can do this, that, and the other thing, may be wrong. So for you, what I want you to get out of this is test your limits. Don't say, this is how I have to write. This is the only way I can write. This is the only way that is possible for me to write. This is the only way that makes sense for me to write. So you have a way to write that I think is important, which is exploring yourself as a writer. And if you're really not interested in that, I have to wonder, why are you writing? If you're just writing because you want to get your name in a book and make lots of money, Bitcoin might be better for you. Some of those other ways to do the the Wall Street bets, those things might be better ways to make money rather than trying to be a writer. Most folks don't make a whole lot of money in writing. It's not a very lucrative career for most folks, the vast majority of folks, but that's very true of a lot of things. So explore your writing, have fun with it, enjoy the process. Make the process yours so you enjoy the process so much that even if you do have 5 New York Times bestsellers, they're all on there for 6 months, you make $1 bazillion, you still enjoy writing, because it's not a matter of just the consequences of your writing that you enjoy, but it's the process of your writing. So there is no finish line, there is no end goal, there is no top of the mountain, and instead you're just loving the journey of what you're doing. You're loving exploring universes, exploring stories, exploring people, telling their story, and really bringing that to people so they can explore things that they might never be able to explore. Maybe in localized fiction like Faulkner, in science fiction and fantasy, which is I'm a big part of. Maybe having that breathless romance or that evil person that the detective is trying to catch in a thriller. Bringing that to people can be one of the greatest joys, and I think that's one of the things that I enjoy is bringing that to myself, bringing the joy of exploration of universes and stories of people that I've discovered, that I've created, is way more enjoyable than just, hey, look, I have a finished book. If I wrote and made $1 million, but I absolutely hated it, I don't know if I would write anymore. Writing because I love it, that's what's important to me. So I really hope you find that in your writing. I really hope your writing brings you a sense of peace and purpose and wonder and enjoyment, because to me that's what it's all about. Take care of yourselves. Have a great day.